Fox News alert. New evidence President Obama may be on the losing side of the argument over recent budget changes. Welcome to America Live, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. After weeks of hearing Washington complain about the dramatic fallout from these automatic spending changes that the president proposed, that Congress passed, and that the president signed into law, a new ABC News poll finds today that Americans support those spending changes by a 2-to-1 margin, except when it comes to the cuts that we're facing in the Defense Department. All that comes as we also get a leaked government memo that suggests the administration may be trying to make sure that changes at different federal agencies are living up to the dire warnings put forward by certain administration officials. The email comes from an Agriculture Department manager who asked about the kinds of changes he was being asked to make and says his bosses responded by saying, quote, "However you manage that reduction, you need to make sure you are not contradicting what we said the impact would be." Chris Direwalt is our Fox News digital politics editor and host of Power Play on FoxNews.com Live. So this is some guy who goes out and inspects fish, and he wanted to do something to make the cuts a little less painful, and is claiming that his bosses were saying, well, you can't do it the way you want to do it, and by the way, don't do anything that would contradict the warnings that we've put out. And that tells us what?
That tells us that mitigating the consequences, mitigating the effects of this so-called sequestration, you talked about the changes, the automatic decreases to automatic increases in federal spending, any change that would be made to that to soften the blow for taxpayers, for consumers of federal products, if you will, is not attractive. If your goal, as it seems very clear now, that the Obama administration's goal is to make it as bad as possible or seem as bad as possible in an effort to get the upper hand on Republicans in the ongoing battle over how much money the federal government's going to spend in the next 6 months.
They are saying it's being misinterpreted, that Vilsack, who oversees the Department of Agriculture, came out and said, I've told everybody, and I mean, that we need to make these cuts as painless as we can, not as painful. So he doesn't seem to accept the interpretation by some of this memo, Chris. And yet, if that really is the instruction, you know, behind closed doors or otherwise, that folks in these agencies need to make the cuts appear, you know, they can do nothing to contradict the dire warnings that came out, then we're all in a lot of trouble, because here's just a sample of the warnings that were given. Listen.
Sequester will weaken America's economic recovery. It will weaken our military readiness. Air traffic controllers and airport security will see cutbacks, and that could cause delays at airports across the country. Tens of thousands of parents will have to scramble to find child care for their kids. Emergency responders, like the ones who are here today, their ability to help communities respond to and recover from disasters will be degraded. Federal prosecutors will have to close cases and let criminals go. Thousands of teachers and educators will be laid off.
Not good. Not warnings we want people feeling like they have to live up to.
No, that is correct. But think about this. If you want to know how this is working out, remember a couple weeks ago, that fella at the Department of Homeland Security who let out a couple thousand illegal immigrants who were in a federal detention center. He said because preparing for the awfulness of sequestration, and they said, well, actually, we didn't need to do that, and it hadn't actually started yet, and we're kind of sorry about that. And then that guy quit or retired or whatever he did. We find out now that at about the same time, the Department of Homeland Security had put in a $50 million bid for new uniforms. So we have sort of jumped the shark on the sequestration scare tactics. And now we know, and it's very simple what we know now, which is this whole fight is about setting federal spending levels from the end of March to the end of September. That's all this is about, a fight back and forth between the president and Republicans in the House about how many billions of dollars federal government's going to spend in those 6 months. That's it.
But they need to look their best. I mean, when you're out there on the front lines trying to make these arrests, you need to look authoritative. Listen, yeah. I know you say it's all about the funding. It's so boring. I can't say the term continuing resolution. I can't do it.
No,
it's almost
we'll
as boring as
think of something
sequestration.
happier.
Even though it's important, it's a boring term.
Yes, ma'am.
But the Washington Post and others are reporting that what's really going on here, what this is all really about, is posturing by the White House to kick out the Republicans so that the Democrats can control the House, come 2014. And so all the rest is just window dressing. It's noise. It's manufactured fights. It's straw men to sort of make people feel good or bad against one party or the other, so that they'll hopefully kick out the Republicans from controlling that House in 2014. That's what they believe the president's goal really is in all of his moves here.
Well, he said it, and his team said it, and we remember very well the White House Communications Director, or former White House Communications Director Dan Pfeiffer, basically saying that their view is that the political process as constituted and their adversaries as they are unworthy, that this is not something worth doing, this is not worth engaging in, so they're looking past this, and they're looking down the road into the second half of the second term when the president foresees being able to have an all-Democratic Congress and being able to put in place all of the things, the stimulus spending and the social issues and the gun control and all the things that he wants. He is trying to have delayed gratification. Beat the Republicans now and then enjoy the fruits of his victory later. The problem is...
I got to go, but I have to ask you quickly. Wasn't Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, just killed? He was skewered for saying his number one goal was to defeat President Obama. That was his number one goal. And then he clarified and said, I mean, that's my number one political goal. So if that is now Barack Obama's goal, his number one, political goal is to get rid of these Republicans so he can control the House. Where's the outrage against him that we saw against McConnell?
Well, they're Republicans. You're allowed to hate on them. It's okay. That's not a problem for many. So don't worry about that.
Okay. Thank you for that. See you, Chris.
You bet.